So, you're back again then. How are you all doing? Back for Drinks with Chris. And so we're back for another week of waiting to find out what's going on with the US presidential election. Still don't know who the president is. If it was anything else, we'd think kind of they were taking the piss, wouldn't we? But we just have to accept and just wait and see what happens. Everybody else has got to kind of wait inside the house, locked down, and we've got to really see which way it goes. But I don't know. It's a bit odd. It's a bit odd, a bit of an odd thing, isn't it? What's everybody drinking? What are you having a sip of? I've got my coffee as usual to warm my cockles today. Put me in a bit of a better mood. It's a bit dreary out there, and as I say, we're just bombarded with negativity, really. And that brings me on to what I'm going to talk about today, which is something that nobody really picks up on. Everybody complains about them or it, but nobody actually picks up on it and says, actually, what can we do about it? And that is that what kind of people are politicians these days? They're a special breed, aren't they? They're kind of... To be a politician, you've got to be a certain type of person, a certain personality, a certain morality level. And we see that kind of all the time now. Politics is the new... I mean, people have said it before. Politics is like the new rock and roll or the new sitcom. No, it's the new sitcom because it's a comedy, or comedy stroke tragedy stroke whatever you want to call it, because it's laughable at times. The way that our kind of political leaders are supposed to behave and supposed to have our best interests at heart, it just kind of it never materializes like that. So like, what do politicians actually do? Like, what sort of a person at school, when you're at school, when you ask the children, what do you want to be when you're older? Very few kids say, oh, I want to be a politician. I want to work in Westminster, or I want to work in Washington. Very few kids say that. It's only once they grow up and start to understand how the world works and how the system works and how money works and how influence works, that's when they start saying, oh, maybe being a politician's not that bad a gig. So you've got to wonder about that. All of the traditional things that kids want to be, sports stars, movie stars, they're all fun things. They're all things that you can enjoy doing. And being a politician's not really the most exciting prospect, is it, for a child, for the future? So, yeah, you've got to wonder what happens from when the kids are young to up to kind of when they become teenagers and then adults, and what happens to them. What happens to that person that makes them think, I want to go into politics? And like, I'd say there's different reasons for it. So I just want to give you a quick definition of... Okay, so apologies for the issues with sound that I had in this section. I just read out the definition of politics, which was, number one, is the activities associated with the governance of a country or area, especially the debate between parties having power. And I think this is important to point out, that really politics should be the negotiation to represent the people of the local constituency or the people of the country. It shouldn't be all around debating who has the power, really. It goes against what politicians are put in their position to do. And the second definition is activities aimed at improving someone's status or increasing power within an organisation. So again, it's not all about negotiating for the people. It's about personal gain, personal power, personal status. So that's what the definition of politics is. It all seems that it's about power. That's what the definition says, and that's what we know. It's about power. And the general the population, us the people, we're convinced that the politicians know what's best for us and know what's best how to govern us. Like that's a strange concept, isn't it? That we we entrust the people above us how best to control us and do what's best for us, with an asterisk, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're saying, okay, we entrust you to go and speak and debate and discuss on my behalf and do what's best for me. Now you've got to ask yourself, over the last, I don't know how many years, over the last 10 years, maybe longer, but certainly it's ramped up over the last 10 years. Have politicians really been doing what's best for you? Or for me, or for anybody? Have they been doing anything? Like, think about it. It's incredible, really. I mean, no, you can't distinguish, apart from kind of political ideology, as a person, you can't distinguish one politician from another. It's regardless of what side of the political spectrum they live on. You can't, like, they're all the same. And that was bore out recently with the vote in the Houses of Parliament about imposing a second compulsory lockdown over COVID-19. And there were a few people who rejected it, a few members of Parliament, MPs who rejected it, but the majority voted for it. But the interesting thing was all of the opposition, so the party in power, in case you might be watching this from the US, the party in power, the Conservatives or the Tories, the opposition is Labour. So the opposition party all voted for the lockdown, which is going to damage businesses. It may or may not work. So, it may work. That's another possibility. But yeah, so it's interesting that the opposition, instead of opposing or abstaining from voting, they voted for what the government had proposed. So it makes you wonder, currently, are all politicians kind of speaking from the same or singing from the same hymn sheet? Are they all together? Because it looks like it could be that way. And another thing is it doesn't matter which country either. All politicians are the same across the world. They all want, as the definition says, they all want power. They all want influence. So that it's the same all around the world. And so you've got to start, as we're starting to become more informed, we've now got the world history of information in our hand. Excuse me, the world history. So all information that has ever existed in the human psyche, in the human mind, we can access. That's incredible. So if anybody wants to spin a yarn, if anybody wants to lie, or anybody wants to pull the wool over our eyes, it's very easy for us to just go, hang on a second. I'm just going to check if what you're saying is true. And so as governments around the world grow, as in the number of politicians grow, like for me, the less we need them, the less we need politicians. But it continues to grow, and their influence and power continues to grow. But because of the information that we have at our fingertips, they're not necessary as they once were. So a lot of the things that go on now, and you kind of check what your politicians do in your country or in party politics and that sort of thing. It's getting more and more difficult to trust politicians. Not only to trust them to represent us and to act on our behalf, kind of in good faith and with high morals and all of those things, but just to trust them as people. Because whether it's the US, whether it's the UK, which are kind of the two political pantomimes that I follow, or if it's a country in Africa, in the Middle East, in whatever, it just seems that we're constantly shown stories that obviously that's without verifying them. We're shown things without verification, and then you can go and verify it yourself. But we're shown things, and we're shown stories constantly of politicians kind of just not being very good people, upstanding citizens, scandals and things that they shouldn't be doing and breaking the law, and it's like so again, like what kind of a person thinks to themselves, okay, I want to be that looks amazing. That job looks great. I'm going to be a politician. Like, you've got to question what sort of person. And I'm not saying all people who go into politics are like that. But as I go through what I'm going to talk about, it is very, very. There are very few people who go in for noble reasons. And so, then I have a question that is, the noble politician kind of doesn't seem to exist very often because of what I've outlined, that the reasons for going into politics is never noble. The reason is never noble. Isn't very often noble. It's occasionally noble, and there are examples of people who go into politics who are kind of doing it for the right reasons, but again, very, very few and far between. So my question is has being a politician ever been a noble position, a noble job? Or is this kind of scandal, corruption, criminality, the seek of power and money and influence, has that always been the motivation for being a politician? Always? It's just that we've been influenced, we've been fed a story that politicians are noble. So the party that's in power, they're doing everything for you, and then the opposition party saying no, they're not doing everything for you because we're the people of the public, and we're the Labour Party, we're the people of the working class, and we'll do everything for you working class people there. Maybe it's always just been about the story, about the fairy tale. And maybe it's just about continuing a sitcom that swaps from one party to the other party, and we continue the sitcom. But actually, when we're in the bar, when we're in the UK, when we're in the bar in the Houses of Parliament, actually we're all drinking together, we're all smoking together, because you can smoke in the bar in the Houses of Parliament, but you can't smoke in any other establishment outside. Do you see how it works? One rule for them, another for us. So maybe that's it. Maybe politicians, maybe they've always done that, and maybe so they're kind of, that's part of the game, and that's part of the motivation. They like the pantomime, they like the play, they like to stand up and shout in a loud voice across the room at somebody else. Maybe that's what it is. But maybe we've just been in the dark, or we've been a little bit blinded to it. I don't know. I'd love to hear some opinions about politicians. Let me know what you think about politicians. Good, bad. Do you think I'm being too harsh? Because I come from that sceptical viewpoint, so am I being harsh? Let me know. And what are your kind of thoughts? What are your experiences of politicians, or when you see politicians in the media, social media or the mainstream? What are your thoughts about politicians? Do you think there are any noble ones out there? Do you think there are any that are doing it for the right reasons? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. So, where did politicians come from? So there's a history of being a politician, of being a representative, and it's kind of always been around. I would imagine. It's been around since the start of time, certainly the start of time, but kind of our species has probably relied on politics. I mean, you look at this is probably going a bit deep, but you look into like our relatives, our genetic relatives, the great apes, the chimps and gorillas, bonobos, whatever, that live in groups. Like, they have politics. Like, they work on a system of negotiation and debate, and who's in charge and who's not in charge, who's subordinate and who's dominant, and who can have the food first and who has it after, and all of these sorts of things. So like, if we want to get that deep into it, that's where it has originated from. But certainly in human society, when politics became a position, a job, would have been in the times of in ancient kind of times, in Stone Age times, in where you would have had tribal warfare, possibly, and in order to stop that tribal warfare, the leaders of each of the tribes, so it may have been the king of each of these tribes or the tribal leader, they would have spoken with their people, their small tribe, and they would have discussed what they want, and then they would have gone to meet the other tribal leaders during times of peace to negotiate and to discuss. And so we're the leaders of this land, you're the leaders of that land, and okay, and your daughter will marry my daughter, and that's how we'll keep peace because then we're kind of family. And but actually, I mean, over here where we live, it's really poor land, so the crops aren't growing as they should do, and our people are going hungry. And over there, you've got a lot of wheat, but over here, we're living near the coast and we do a lot of fishing, so we've got fish. So is there any kind of arrangement that we can make where we'll give you some fish and you give us some grain, or whatever the kind of the food is that you produce from there? And that's how politics started. And so probably at that time there was probably still a lot of dirty politics, but that's how it would have manifested. In that it was about debating and negotiating to make sure that everybody in your team, in your party, in your tribe, had everything they needed, and everybody was looked after, and nobody was hurt, and everybody was safe. And so it was easier to do that than to fight and be at constant war all the time, and battling the other tribes for land and expanding your empire and all of those things. So that's where it would have started, and then over time, as these tribes and in England, in the UK, you had kind of you had the native British tribes, but then you'd have the Romans came, the Normans, and there's all of these different people who came and conquered the UK. And so, but over time, as the UK became its own nation and it was no longer conquered, and it was a set kind of country, each of these townships and villages and as they grew and the population grew, it was necessary to get to appoint a representative who could receive orders from the capital and from the king. At the moment now, that's obviously our government, but also to take the points of view and the wants and the desires of the people in the local area, in your local village. Take those concerns to the king and discuss. So that's where kind of a parliament popped up then, the parliament allowing the people to have a voice. And so, again, I would say maybe there's dirty politics there. People used to use corrupt methods to get what they wanted and gain more power and whatever else. But there was still a nobility to it then. The idea that there was no other way to communicate directly with the person who was in power and who was in charge. And so somebody had to represent the people. So in the local area, somebody had to go to a meeting with all the local people of influence or any local people, discuss and say, okay, what's going on? Like, well, the taxes are too high and we're being taxed far too much, and we need more land, and we need more this, and we need less that, and we need some help with this, and we've got some tribes over the border that keep coming and attacking, and it's just not. So kind of thinking more about medieval times now, and so we don't know what to do with them, and we could do with some help. And okay, so as a representative, I'm going to travel now to London, and it'll take me whatever, a week or whatever it used to, I don't know what it used to take by horse. So I'm going to go to London and I'll discuss. So then you go to the Parliament and you sit down and you discuss and so that was the reason behind having politicians, and that's where it came. That's where it grew from, was to represent your local kind of your local region, your local constituent, and so it was about information exchange, I guess. So that's what was important about that relationship. Today, we don't need to go and speak with our representative. We don't need to, because we can access information direct from Parliament. So they can post whatever they want online. They can send out messages about COVID, about whatever they want to our phone. They can do video calls. They can do live videos. They can do a live video stream where everybody is invited and everybody can go and speak and have their say. We can do video calls with however many, 50 people or whatever it is on Zoom, I don't know, to get their message out there. We've got multiple media channels that will broadcast messages from our supreme leaders in the government. So we don't need somebody, a representative, to go there, come back, and tell us what the Prime Minister has said. Because you say, all right, mate, I've just watched it on the TV, or I've just watched it on Twitter. I've just seen what he said. Like, how much are you getting paid to go there and do that? So then the other part of the exchange is the politician, the MP, going from here to there, and to take our concerns over there. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because I believe that there is still a need. There is still a function for that, because I've got no way to speak directly to the Prime Minister myself. And for everybody to have access to the Prime Minister would take a lot of, kind of imagine the millions of messages and emails and everything else it would be impossible. So to be able to give one person the ability to go there, to listen, you can go to one of their MP surgeries or whatever they're calling. You can discuss with them. You can send them an email about your concerns. And they can then take it. They can stand up in the House of Parliament if a few people have discussed this issue, and they can then also follow it up with an email to the Prime Minister and hope to get some change and hope to help and that sort of thing. So there is something for that. However, where that falls down is when the politician no longer takes what the people in their constituency say, whether it's as individuals or whether it's as a group, when they no longer take it to the central kind of power hub, in the UK's case, the Houses of Parliament. So if they're not doing that, what is now the point of politicians? Because there's been multiple, and I'll get to that after, but there's been multiple examples recently in politics where local politicians haven't taken what the local people have said and gone to Parliament and voted for what the people have asked for. They've gone against their own people. So you've got to question, like, is it necessary anymore to have politicians in the way that we have them? Is there a better way for us to organise ourselves as a society and community? Are we living in a stupid, antiquated, obsolete system now? Are we? I'm starting. The more I can see what's going on in British politics, in US politics, in European politics, in global politics. The more I look at it, the more I say maybe we don't. This system is not fit for purpose anymore at all. But it's still fit for purpose for the people who work in it, the politicians. So you've got to question it. It's fascinating to me, but you have got to question it. So the next thing is there are different types of politicians. So I'm not going to paint all of them with the same brush. There are different types of politician. So the first one is the political family, and you've got to question this. You've got to really question political families. So this is people who look at the Bushes in America, George and I don't know, but anyway, there's a load of Bush in America. The Clintons, a heavily political family. And then you've got all people behind the scenes who are senators and their grandfathers have been senators and they've been senators and blah, 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 blah. But it's the political families, and in the UK, it's come from... We've got one kind of career family, which is the royal family, and that's been a political thing throughout history, where it's a very simple example of how power and is passed down from generation to generation, and there's a lineage and all of that. But again, in British politics, you can see people. You can see people. The Kinnocks. The Kinnocks have got father and son in politics, and so these political families. You're born into politics. So my one thing is how the hell does that happen? So if you think about it, you're one politician. You're an MP, and you're in power, and you've got your constituency, and apparently that all of your constituents have voted for you. Then when your son comes in, he then gets voted. I don't know whether it would be in that same constituency, or he goes and kind of branches out and finds his own constituency. But then he gets voted in. So and these people, it's all influence and power. Obviously, it's walking the halls of Parliament and high-fiving in the halls of Parliament, in the bar of Parliament, all the right people. And then, obviously, when your son's born, you go to all of these events, and your son or your daughter comes along, and you show them to all the people. And okay, so that's like the next level of influence, and so it's pretty insane to think that can happen. Surely, family politics is that's not the best way to do anything. The best way is kind of to have new people coming through all the time, and fresh blood and all that sort of thing. So it's a bit, like political families is just a bit of an odd thing for me. But again, like their focus is on money, influence and power, and maintaining the influence and power that they have for business interests, for their lifestyle, for all of these things. The second one is kind of your local, like I say, your local MP, the one that has come from, and there's quite a few of them actually, that maybe has come from nowhere or has come from business, and so they get into politics. Now, the ones who kind of get into it, who've come from nowhere, is the third example that I'm going to talk about, which is the person who goes into it for noble reasons. But the person who goes in from maybe a wealthy family, and they may be in business, or they may have built up their business, they're going into politics because they feel that they can influence policy for their business. So the kind of the motive and the motivation for that isn't the most noble. They know that by getting to Westminster, they can influence things, they can change policy, they can vote against things that might damage their business personally. They might be able to get contracts, they might be able to discuss with people how to grow a particular industry that they're in, or how to influence their investments and all those things. So they go into it for so you've got the people who are in political families aren't in it for a very noble reason. They're in it for their champagne parties and everything else, and to keep it within the family. Then you've got business people who become local MPs, and they go into it for business. And then the third one, you've got that really rare noble person who wants to get into politics for a noble reason. And it's sad because there aren't many that are like that, number one. Number two, because they don't want to play dirty, they're thinking, right, I'm in it for a very noble reason. They very seldom get in as the local MP and get voted in as their local MP because there's other dirty games that other people know how to play. And then once they get in as a local MP, it's very easy for them to then be swallowed up or corrupted higher up the ladder. As they get higher up the ladder, then it's kind of like they'll get offered things. They'll get, come round to this party, and you're invited to this party, and over a few drinks, well, look, we've been worrying about this policy, and next week we're having a vote on it, and we'd really like you to be part of the committee and vote for it. And there's so many kind of strategies that are used to mould those people. But a few of them kind of get in. A few of them get into politics and seem to be doing it for the right reasons and stay relevant. And there's a few of them that I can think of. One's Tulsi Gabbard in the US, but again, like, she's ignored. Nobody cares. She's got some great policies. She seems like a great woman. She seems like she knows what she's talking about. She wants to make a difference, but nobody cares, and she's not promoted. She's not pushed. She's not, and so she's kind of become irrelevant, disappeared. There's a few in the UK. I've forgotten the guy's name, and I'm so sorry. If you get round to watching this video, he's the guy who he's running for. He's going to run for mayor of London. And he's just a real breath of fresh air. What's his name? Sean Bailey. So, like, this guy, if you don't know who Sean Bailey is as a politician, like, I'm going to be honest, I'm slagging off politicians to the hilt in this video. But Sean Bailey's one of the very, very, very few who, when he speaks, I listen. And at the moment, I trust what he's saying. And I'm on board with what he's saying. Whether that's going to be true in the future, I don't know. But at the moment, Sean Bailey is a ray of light in politics, and he's one of the only things that stopped me from really kind of turning my back on politicians and really kind of having a real dislike for all politicians and anybody who wants to be a politician. So my hope is that he doesn't get swallowed up into that system again, smeared and pushed. And I mean, you can tell his character. He's very strong-willed, very strong character. He's a real strong guy. But my hope is that's not always enough. My hope is that he can be cutthroat and he can stick to what he's doing, and we'll see. So yes, I've spoken a little bit about the motivations to be a politician generally aren't what they used to be, or aren't what they're supposed to be. The objective is supposed to, or the motivation is supposed to be that you want to change things. You want to change the way it is because it's not working. But that's not it anymore. It's about having influence over your business and being able to influence other people, and even just like the attraction for a lot of these people of being able to prance around the houses of Parliament and the House of Lords, the House of Commons, and rub shoulders with these so-called powerful people. And even that, you can see even that, like when new politicians on the TV, when they're doing interviews, sat next to, it might be Question Time, or it might be, I don't know, or any other politics show, and they're sat next to a career politician who's been there and for the last 30 years, and they puff out their chest and they're like, "Ooh, I've made it now." And so even that feeling of power is powerful for some people and is an influence for them. A few of the other motivations. You're part of a privileged club. If you're a politician, once you're a politician, that's it. Then you're part of that club, and forevermore, you're going to be an MP or whatever you call it in the US, senator or whatever. But you're going to be, so on your resume, you're always going to be able to put that. So you're part of this privileged club. And within that privileged club, you get access to business contacts. You get access to buyers for your products and sellers and all of these sorts of things that normal people don't get. So that's certainly a motivation these days. Dare I say it, a career for doing very, very little. Not all politicians. There's some that kind of stay relevant, even if it's not done in the best way. But there are politicians who are there and don't do a lot at all. They just go. They just kind of collect their pay because they go and sign in, whatever you do with your card. I don't know, clock in to show that they've arrived at the Houses of Parliament, and they'll sit through some debates and they'll do. So it's a career for doing very little. It's good money. So I think MPs, I don't know what it is now, they were on £60,000 a year. That's for going and sitting in a room and listening to people shout at each other. And And again, this is a global thing, but there's that many photos and videos around the world of people sitting in their parliaments asleep and just sitting in the chair like this or resting their eyes, and you're like, come on, man. Like, it takes the piss, really. So it's a career for very, very little. There's a certain level of immunity. So a lot of MPs and politicians get caught out for doing corrupt things or doing illegal things. And there's a certain level of cover-up and immunity that goes on. So there's a certain level of like, if it's found out soon enough and discussed, well, we can cover it because it's not going to be good for our image in our party. So it gets covered up. So we see a certain level of the scandal that goes on. But I wonder how much more goes unseen. And then the crazy thing is that a lot of the times you'll get MPs who get caught out, get convicted, have even gone to prison, and then maintain their position and come out and go back into their job. I mean, how many people in the normal world in the UK, I can't speak for anywhere else, get convicted of something, go to prison, and their job's waiting for them when they come out. So it's another privilege. It's insane, really. Honestly. So I just don't think, when you think about all of those motivations, politicians no longer serve the people. It's about serving their own interests the majority of the time. And if I'm wrong, tell me you think I'm wrong. Put it in the comments, because I dare anybody to try and tell me that it's the opposite, that it's the majority of MPs, majority of politicians around the world do so in the best interests of their local constituents. I don't think anybody can tell me that. And surely that's wrong. So surely it's not the case of when we look at our political systems, we say, well, yes, their interests are personal. And yes, they're looking after themselves. But this little percentage, they do represent us. So like 30% of all of their motivation is our representation. Surely that's not right. Surely 100% should be our interests and our representation. Surely that's what it should be. And if you don't do that, you don't receive your pay. I mean, expenses, for example, like it's insane that the amount of things that get put on MPs' expenses, second homes, and things like that, like, and family members on the payroll, and like it's a cushy life, but it's also a corrupt way of living. It's like a morally bankrupt way of living your life to be a politician and to do those things. And again, like I'm naturally very, very skeptical about people, but there are. I just need to make sure that people understand there are people who do it for a noble reason, and there are people who do a good job. I just don't think that there's many of them. I just don't think it's a normal way for them to live. And so to be a normal person, sitting at home, thinking about what you want to do with your life, and to look at politicians as they are now, and kind of the disgraceful way that they conduct themselves and disgraceful decisions that they make, I think that you've got to be a certain type of person, kind of psychologically, to see that and think, yeah, that's what I want to do. I mean, do you, like, let me know in the comments, do you want to be a politician? Would you like to be a politician? What are your feelings towards politicians? Do you think the majority, do you think it's the opposite of what I'm saying? Do you think the majority of politicians do it for noble reasons? Or do you think, actually, in our system now, they're useless? Really? So, I mean, like, so now you've got your modern politician who, and I don't know if it's because the magnifying glass is on them now. We can see through that lens. We can see what they're like. We can see them on Twitter, what they're like in their day-to-day existence, their day-to-day life, which is incredible. We've never been able to do that before. So being able to see that, is it just that we can see what they're doing now? Like, we can see you, can see what you're doing. Or, and it's always been like that, or has something been magnified recently? It feels to me like the quality of politician has gone down, in my opinion. There's very few quality politicians. There are MPs currently on front benches in Parliament who are thick as two short planks. Thick. Completely unintelligent. And some of the points that they make, you're like, what are you talking about? And they think that the public are dumb because they think that the public can't see what they think the stupid things they're saying. So I don't know. It seems like the quality of MP, of politician, has just plummeted, and they're just not very good anymore. And then you add on the modern politicians, quite treacherous these days, quite cutthroat. I mean, a really interesting thing about politicians being treacherous and just not morally upstanding is this thing with Brexit. Many politicians wanted to. I'm just going to put this on here. Wanted to stop Brexit first and then overturn Brexit after, even though the public had voted for Brexit. The public had voted to have a referendum on Brexit. The public then voted for Brexit. The public then voted for the Tories, whose manifesto was Brexit. So the public had said they wanted Brexit. And so these politicians were against it all the way through, wanted to overturn it, wanted a second vote. Let's have a second referendum. And no, incredibly, after the election in the US, and then due process hasn't yet finished, and there are concerns over voter fraud and all of that sort of stuff, whatever. It's still a process. You've still got to get to the end of that process. And if at the end of that process, everything's checked out, fine, that's cool. But the same MPs, you can't declare a winner right now and say that's it without checking out all of the allegations of fraud. So you've got to take a step back and say, okay, fine, we'll just hang on, hold fire. But so my point is that the same politicians, the same British MPs that wanted a second referendum didn't want to accept the first result. Said there were reasons why people voted that way. People didn't know what they were voting for. We need to do it again. We can't accept the first one. We need another one. Those same MPs have got the brass, have got the balls to stand up now and push out tweets and comments and things saying democracy has to be respected. This is the new president of the United States of America. And it's like, why? People can see you, you know. You do realise people can see what you're doing. Like, we're not stupid. You can see what's going on. No, you don't know that. You think that you're back in the 1900s and nobody can see what you're doing. So they're treacherous now, and it's the same around the world. Like if you're in the US or the UK and you think, our political system's a laughing stock. We're not alone. Go around the world and see what politicians are doing around the world. Like when I lived in Colombia, I used to live in a beautiful city called Cartagena on the Caribbean coast. Beautiful, gorgeous. I don't want to go off too much of a tangent because I loved it there and I want to go and live there again. But so, like, regularly we'd go and me and my wife we'd go to the local coffee shop, and the coffee, it was a branded cafe called Juan Valdez, which is like the poster coffee brand in Colombia. So they've got their own coffee shops as well. Starbucks, similar to Costa Coffee, all of that sort of stuff. They've got Juan Valdez. So we used to go, and we used to go the most days at the same time. We'd finish what we were doing in the morning. We'd say, okay, we'll go and have a coffee. So we'd go up whatever time it was, quite early in the morning, but we'd go and we'd sit down and we'd have a coffee every day. And we'd sit there, we'd have our coffee, and every day these local councillors or local politicians would come in dressed in their guayabera shirts, looking smart, shades on, very smart, beautiful leather bags and So they'd all come in and they'd sit down and they'd take their bag off and they'd wave and everything else, and they didn't have to go to the counter. People would bring the coffee over to them, but everybody else needed to go and pay, like in Starbucks at the counter, right? So we'd sit there, and people would be coming in while we were there. People would be coming in, shaking their hand, and nice to see you, and come and sit down and let's talk. And people would come and give them a message, and then go back again and come and so we used to laugh at this because these people would be sitting there. We'd finish what we were doing. We'd go and do whatever work we were doing. We'd go and see people. We'd have meetings and that sort of thing. And then we might come back at the end of the day. So we might be talking 4 or 5 o'clock now. And we might come back and we might pick up because the day was scorching, really, really hot. So we might come back and pick up they used to do like a passion fruit frappe and things like that. So it would cool you down, delicious. So we'd come and have this passion fruit frappe or whatever, and we'd come in, and they were still there. And these politicians were still sitting there, still drinking coffee. They hadn't moved. And yet, in their offices where they were supposed to be attending people, there were queues all day, massive queues of people waiting to speak to them, or waiting to speak to their secretary, or waiting to speak to whatever. And these people stood outside in the heat, like with an umbrella and so these people, these motherfuckers, they didn't care that their people that they were representing were sitting or standing in queues and under the Caribbean sun, like Christ almighty. So it's the same everywhere. It's not like we're not special. It seems that politicians are the same breed everywhere. So it's more obvious now. You can see that you can see what's going on. You can identify who the liars are, who the cheats are, and it's just very, very obvious. And so we've got to hold politicians to account. Honestly. Their job is to be public servants and nothing more. Nothing more. Public servants. You're there to represent us and to do what's best for the people. And if you don't do that, you're not doing your job. So that's what we need to start asking questions about with politicians. Is like, what is, if they're not representing us, if they're not being public servants, if they're doing it for themselves, then what do we need them for? And it seemed like more and more to me, it's starting to seem like politicians are the worst of our society. Like, as crazy as that sounds, and it's as crazy as it is to kind of accept, are they the worst of our society now? You've got to ask yourself, haven't you? You've got to ask that question. Because if they are getting involved in, so the motivations are kind of a certain way, and they're not doing it for the good of the public. Okay, fine. And then they're getting involved in scandals that we can see plain as day. Then there's a problem somewhere, isn't there? I mean, some of the scandals that they've been involved in, is things like expense scandals. So they buy in presents and gifts, and there was one. It was a scandal a few years ago, but I guarantee it's still going on. That bought a kind of a house for his ducks in the middle of his pond. Like, what? This is taxpayer money. Sex scandals. The amount of kind of sex scandals, sexual assault, sexual harassment, abuse that comes out from the House of Parliament is just mind-blowing, honestly. And it's not representative of the general population. I mean, this incredible thing with Dawn Butler, who's an MP for Labour. Like, this recently, she posted on social media that, and I consider this a scandal, but she posted on social media that she'd been racially profiled by police, and police had stopped her car. And so she made a big thing about how the police in the UK are racist, systemic racism, and all these things. And so she kind of alleged, she released a video and she alleged this kind of racism. And then it turned out, which was pretty incredible, was that her driver was white, so the police had stopped him. And the treacherous little worm that she is, because if you do these things, I've got nothing but contempt for you. She'd switched her camera around on the video and then posted it so that it looked like she was the driver. She was on the right hand side and she was the driver, so that it looked, so she'd set up this scene that she'd been stopped because she was black. And the way that people noticed was because the writing was back to front in the video. There's some writing that was back to front. So it's pretty crazy, really, to think that an MP would do that. And then there was kind of like people saying that the windows were tinted. So how did the police see? So they are really, like, the scandals that come out is not, it's horrible. I mean, bullying, discrimination. Like, here's another thing as well. And a thing that I think about quite a bit is the amount of racial discrimination that appears to be, racial or ethnic discrimination, that seems to be in political parties, such as recently the report that came out that there was systemic anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. I feel like that's not representative of the general population. Normally, normal people go about their daily life without any prejudice, without any discrimination. Normal people. So why the hell, in these institutions that are supposed to be representative of us, do you have so much shit, like so much scandal and discrimination and abuse, and like, why does this happen? It's more and more I'm just starting to think that maybe we don't need them anymore. Do we need to have these horrible people pretending to represent us and getting a load of benefits off it? It's horror. It's really disgusting for me. And then, like, right now, one of my biggest frustrations is having people cheerlead for politicians now. So you've got people who are like really cheerleading for politicians. Like, you've got people who are Trump fanatics, Trump 2020, MAGA, and all of that sort of stuff. Like, they're fanatics. And then you've got people who are like blindly fanatical about Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Like, blindly, like, all of these bits of news, even if it's not evidence, like, all of the little bits of news and bits of evidence that have popped out about Joe Biden's son doing things for cash with Russia, with China, they're really, like, those are really, even if it's only 1% of the whole thing is true, it's like something's going on, something's happening with that. So it's crazy to think that these people are whiter than white. So what I'm saying is you've got to stop putting them on the politicians on a pedestal. The same in the UK. Like the Labour Party. There's people who are fanatically Labour. Fanatical. And won't hear a bad word said about them. There's people who are fanatically Conservative, fanatically like pro-Brexit and pro... Like, stop cheerleading. Stop it. Just stop putting all of your respect on these politicians. It's not necessary. You can still vote and you can still make decisions based on who you kind of which party you think will steer the country the way that you want it to be steered. But you don't need to be a fan. Like, hold them all to a high standard. Hold them all currently to contempt. Sorry, hold them all in contempt. Like, hold them in contempt. That's all I'm saying. Because at the moment, what's happening is that they're dividing people. They're dividing us. They're making people hate each other. literally making people hate each other, making people not want to talk about these issues together, because if you're not on my team, you're on the other person's team, and we can't be friends, or we can't. It's time to stop that. We're not the enemy for each other. It's the politicians that are our enemy currently. And until we start changing that, and until we start saying this can't be the way we move forward, and politicians can't behave that they're behaving now, until we do that, and we unite as people again, and say, well, these are our public servants now, they're our public servants, nothing more, then it's always going to be like this. We're always going to be hating each other. It's crazy. So we need to stop hating on each other. Like I've said this in previous videos, we've got to make sure that we can have differing opinions, but at the end of the day, we're still members of our kind of community, society. We don't want to hate each other. We don't want to not like each other. And the despicable part is that the way that politicians are creating that division and creating that tribalism and pushing us apart from each other, the way that they're doing it is through a propaganda, like that kind of, it's the latest propaganda tool of choice. It's the one that's the most effective at the moment, which is identity politics and sloganeering. By doing that, it divides us. Sloganeering being where you put out a slogan that nobody can disagree with. So then people disagree with it. Some people don't like that these slogans are used and everybody should agree with them, because you don't always agree. And then they become political. The slogans become political, and so it's just we need to get away. We need to get away from making politicians into celebrities and making them more important than they are. Like, we shouldn't really care what their opinion is on this. I don't care what your opinion is. Just do what I've asked you to do. Seriously, that's what it comes down to. I don't know if you agree. Genuinely, I don't care what politicians think. Like, I just want you to listen to what we say and go and do your job and pass on that message to the Prime Minister. That's it. Apart from that, I'm not bothered. Like, share your opinion with your friends. So when they don't do that, when they're not carrying out the public's wishes, it's not on. So something needs to change. We need to always be suspicious now of the motives of politicians, because they've proven themselves time and again now to just be not the carriers of the moral kind of compass anymore. They're not, and they're trying to drag us down with them. And I'll repeat, they are our public servants, nothing more. So if you don't like what they're doing, you need to get rid of them. That's it. It's that simple. Then they're not anything else. Like, they shouldn't be anything else. They shouldn't be a celebrity that people are patting on the back because they've made this stupid statement about one group that makes that group not like other people and makes other groups not like them. They're playing a game with us. That's the problem at the moment. And so, for me, kind of moving forward and thinking about how we get out of this mess that we're in, because this is never going to end. I'm going to be completely honest with you. This is never going to end. Because the public's accepted that nothing can change. Like, how many times do you hear people say, when I vote for the other party, nothing changes. When I vote for this party, nothing changes. Nothing ever changes. So they've proven that they can do whatever they want and nothing changes. So the only way that something can happen is if we've got to rethink it. We've got to think how we change the system to make it better for us. And if they don't want us to discuss with them and to change it via kind of via democratic means, as in voting for this politician or that politician to make it better. If it's going to just continue like this, we need to think of a different way of doing things. We need to think of a system change, not with their consent, but without their consent. But it's just, I understand, like, that I'm saying is kind of bizarre in itself. Like, it's very difficult to comprehend how you would make that change. How do you make a systemic change without the consent of the people in power? It's, I don't know, like, it's really difficult to think how you would do that. But I do think a different system is possible. I really do. And I think it's needed. We need a different system. We don't need all of these politicians anymore. We don't need them. I mean, things like voting. Voting can be done online. And I saw something the other day, and it resonated with me. It was, somebody had made a point that when people say, okay, we should be voting online, like, you vote online with, I don't know, with your national insurance number or your social security number in the US. Like, no more mail ballots, no more filling it out, no more going to the polling station and putting your cross or whatever else. Or you only do that. That's another option. But the reason being, like, and people say, well, imagine all the fraud that can go on with that. And it's like, what are you telling me, that a pencil and paper is more protected against fraud than doing it using your national insurance number or your social security number? Is that what you're telling me? Because that's bizarre. Like, of course, that can be fraud. That can be like defrauded. That can be fraudulently done. Of course, it can with a pencil and paper, a rubber, and then you put another mark. Like it. So I think that we can communicate. We can definitely communicate with our government in a different way. We don't need representatives to represent us in that way. So it's just to think about that. I don't think we need the number of politicians that we need. And I think it would be better to have something automated where we can raise our concerns, where we can have our concerns addressed properly. It just needs a system change, that's all. The question is, do they want to change the system? And my thoughts are that they will never want to change the system. They've got so much power now over us. They can tell us when to stay in our house and not come out our house. In the UK, they've just banned protests. You can't protest in the UK anymore by law. Protests were a democratic tool for the people to rise up and say, we don't like this anymore. We don't want this anymore. So we're protesting against it, and that's been taken away. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on, and this video has been about kind of the sort of person that wants to be a politician and that is a politician these days. I'd love to know your thoughts. Please leave some comments and let's talk about it. Come over onto my social media and kind of just throw some questions at me, and let's have a conversation. Because what we're living in at the moment is not what we were meant for as people. I feel like we've been taken for mugs from all sides of the political spectrum. So let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching again. Please subscribe if you like this video and hit the bell notification symbol so that you get an email to let you know when I've uploaded. I upload once a week on this channel. It's either on a Friday or a Saturday, so look out for it. And then I also upload on clips on Drinks with Chris clips. So search for Drinks with Chris clips, and so you'll get little short snippets, and you'll be able to kind of watch those if you struggle with the longer ones. This time I'm going to ask you to come and connect with me on Skype. So my Skype is chrisrussellhosp@gmail.com. chrisrussellhosp@gmail.com. Add that to your Skype and let's have a few chats and let's talk. And if you want to be a guest, then add me on Skype and we can discuss that over there. So thank you very much, and I really, really appreciate you coming and spending a bit of time watching me babble on about something that I think is important in the modern time. which is to understand that we're not against each other, but we do have people in our midst who want to benefit from the power that kind of our governments currently have over us. So I hope you appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you. So next time, just grab a drink, come and sit down, and let's talk about what's going on in the world. So thank you very much. See you later. Take care.